Good morning and welcome to the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the 9th of April at 10 a.m. Can I remind everybody that this meeting is being webcammed live? Thank you. We'll start with the agenda. Do we have any apologies, Mandy?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillors Clements, Spencer, Francis, Councillor Peters will be coming later, and also Cabinet Member Councillor Tagg.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest? No, we'll take that as a no, thank you. Okay, have we all read the minutes from the meeting that was held on the 26th of February 2024? Yes, do we have a proposer, please? Thank you. Seconder? Thank you. So we'll go straight into number 4, Digital Innovation and Strategy Update. I believe that's you, Councillor Perry. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations on your new role, and wish you well for your first meeting, and be gentle with me. I think this morning's going to be a bit of a tech fest, I'm afraid, for the first part of the meeting. So we've got a few things which are quite technical, but I think also quite exciting and interesting. The first that we're going to talk about is our digital strategy. And this is really an interesting subject for the County Council. I don't think it was that long ago, was it, that we all stood in the bank in a queue trying to cash a cheque. And then on Saturday nights, we scrambled down to the video shop to get the latest blockbuster on VHS to go with our takeaway, etc. All of those things got swept away, didn't they? And we now almost live our lives through apps on our phones and all sorts of things. And did we ever imagine that? Did we ever sit there at some point and say, the future's going to look like this? Because when I was a kid, we were all going to live in cities in the sky and have jetpacks. They never turned up, and I was really disappointed by that. It just demonstrates that we cannot predict the future. We cannot imagine necessarily the future. All we can do is respond to what we think the future looks like. And what we now know is that councils are unlikely to look like they look today 5 or 10 years from now. And if you believe that they're going to look like this 5 or 10 years from now, I think we're all going to be disappointed, because there is a new wave of digital and technological change heading our way that will make society, the world we live in, and importantly, the workplace, a very different place. I know when my son studied computer science at university, he was told that by the time he'd finished his 4-year degree, the jobs that existed in that sphere that existed today would not exist, and that probably half the jobs that would exist in 4 years' time wouldn't have existed then, if you get my drift. The pace of change is really important. So what's our ask in all of this? What have we got to do? We've really got to step back, haven't we, and work out how we therefore structure and prioritise what we want to do with the opportunities that will be presented to us. Not just opportunities, but also potential threats. Things that if you don't do, they will come back at you. So therefore, important not to be Luddite about these things, but also to be embracing about them. But how do we design that? How do we lay out our strategy here? So this is the starting point to that. And I'd really like you to road test this for us, shake it a little bit for us to see if we are in the right way thinking about this. What we don't want to end up with is an organisation that looks like a teenage bedroom with discarded technology all over the place. That's just going to be disruptive and wasteful. We want to be focused on this. So it is therefore about understanding why. Why are we doing this? What is the benefit? And how are we going to measure that benefit? We often, and I'm probably king of this, I'm always looking for the financial return. What is the benefit here? Because if we're not doing something that's going to give us a return, why would you do it? Well, maybe moving forward, money isn't the only measure. Maybe moving forward, quality of life is a measure. Improving someone's circumstances is a measure. All of those things could be important to us. So we're not, as my leader accuses me of sometimes, of chasing wooden dollars. We are actually both chasing real money, but also chasing what are the other benefits in there that we could actually extract that would be beneficial to people and perhaps at the same time save some money. But that isn't the primary objective. If we always use money as the primary objective, we often miss opportunity and innovation. So this is a starting point in terms of how we therefore try and structure our thinking on this so we don't become butterfly minds. Try and structure our thinking to get the best out of it and not be caught out by it. So I'm going to hand over to my officer colleague, Lindsay Bissell, who was going to take you through, I think, a presentation which you've already seen, but these things are always better live, and Lindsay will make this very colourful for you.
Thank you, Ian. So, as Ian said, one of the big things that we've done over the last 6 to 7 months is think about why. And 4 of the reasons as to why we need to ensure that our digital strategies fit for the future are currently on the screen. So there's lots and lots of great work that happens across Staffordshire, and digital innovation already exists. Some teams are really harnessing that and having great outcomes. But there's 4 key challenges as an organisation that, through the work that we've done to date, has highlighted for us as an organisation. Ian has already articulated some of these, but number 1 is the pace and understanding of digital innovation. What we know is this is a very fast-changing technological world around us, and anything that we put in place today, as Ian said, will definitely need changing in the future. And that's a big challenge for us as an organisation because it will never stand still. For example, a lot of the things that we're hearing on the news and in other areas at the minute is around the use of artificial intelligence, which could potentially be fantastic for us as an organisation. Will it be artificial intelligence in 5 years? Probably not, because there'll be something new that has appeared on the market. So a big challenge for us as an organisation is keeping on top of the changing world around us. We'll probably never get it 100% perfect. We already know that there's lots of pockets of officers that understand digital and the opportunities that we have as an organisation. The challenge we have and the way we see the challenge is how do we connect them to real business and service problems. Digital cannot just be the ultimate answer to everything, but it can absolutely help us support address problems that we might already face. That is one of our challenges that we need to look at moving forward. Interdependencies, as I've just said, lots and lots of great digital innovation already taking place. One of the challenges for us as an organisation is how do we connect them? So how do we get the best financially out of that digital innovation? For example, lots and lots of great digital innovation already takes place in the health and care area and other areas across the council. Might that also be beneficial within children's? Might that also be beneficial in other departments? At the minute, we have no mechanism to connect that together as one. And ultimately, the end state, where do we want to be as an organisation? And it'd be really helpful to get your feedback today on the way that you see our organisation in the next 5 years, and from a member perspective, where you would like us to be. We've done lots of work with officers within the council, asking exactly the same questions that we're asking today. Where do you think we could be? What are the key challenges that digital could help us address? So all of that feedback from you today is really helpful in helping us shape the strategy. Lots of work has taken place, and the first place we started was with evidence. So what are we already doing as a council? What does this look like, and where is it we want to be in the future? The chart on the screen shows us 4 stages of digital maturity, stage 4 being forward thinking, on the front foot. We're market leaders in the game, and stage 1 and 0 being we do some things in a digital way. The evidence showed us with the current programmes that we've got in place across the council, predominantly we operate within stage 2 and stage 1. Where we want to be as a council is more around the stage 3. So not quite a market leader, but quite a fast follower. Look at what others are doing and fail fast if we need to. So the case for change, there's 2 things that we'd like to deliver as part of the digital strategy. One is really setting out our organisational goal and where we want to be. The next is that strategy, and of course with a delivery plan that sits underneath it. On the screen in front of you, you can see there we've done lots and lots of engagement across the council, across partners. We've had lots of strategy development sessions. So the information that you see in front of you today has absolutely been created and developed with the workforce. We did a big research piece looking at what other councils are doing, what other private sectors are doing, and is there anything that we can learn from to bring back to Staffordshire for our organisation. This is about learning, it's about us learning. None of us are complete experts in this field, and I think that's fine. We need to really harness the partnerships that we've got around us. We've got some great partnerships with people like Microsoft. How do we utilise that in the best possible way? We've got great academics around us at Stafford University and Keele University, and we're really interested in utilising that academic arm to help us learn and improve as a council. We did the Senior Leadership Conference in October and really started to develop the art of the possible. What could we do in Staffordshire to really harness this next phase of our digital strategy? And alongside this, developing the strategy, we're already looking at pilots that we can already learn from. I think one of the key principles of this is we need to learn fast and accept that that might mean failing fast as well. So Microsoft Copilot, which is an AI tool that we're looking into and about to launch a pilot in the next couple of weeks. This is about how you can automate information without officer time needing to do the legwork. We're looking at translation services and what that might mean for the organisation. And the one I think that I'm probably the most excited about is how we can look at artificial intelligence to support children applying for an EHCP plan, given the challenges that we know we face in Staffordshire and nationally. And we're also looking at RPA, robotic process automation. These are the things that we're about to pilot. I think the word pilot is a really important one, back to my point around learning fast and failing fast. So we've done lots of engagement sessions across the organisation, and today we're seeking your feedback. I've talked about the journey to date so far, and on the screen in front of you is where we want to be in the future. This is a 5-year plan. This will not be done really quickly. This is about changing culture, helping people to not be afraid of digital technology. And I do think that is a challenge that we face. This is about bringing people on board and helping people learn together about what that might mean for their service areas and the problems that they face. So developing the strategy. As part of our engagement and the work that we've done to date, we feel that the strategy needs to consist of 6 component pillars. And it will be really great if you could give us some feedback on the pillars today. Is there anything you feel is missing? Is there anything you'd like more clarity on? And more importantly, do you feel they're the right pillars? These are the pillars that the officers within the organisation think will address a lot of the challenges that we face from a digital perspective. And in the main, they are around developing our digital champions. So how do we get people across the organisation to support people in the business? The next one is around digital council. So this is predominantly how our residents will access us as an organisation. What will that mean for our website? What will that mean for chatbots? What will that mean for virtual agents? And more importantly, what will that mean for customers? The next one is around digital place. So we know for all of this to work, we absolutely need to have the right connectivity across Staffordshire. It's important to note that this isn't a new piece of work. This already exists, and this is being led by Idris Roberts. What we need to do as an organisation is think about how we bring this together into one strategy to deliver this for our residents and customers across Staffordshire. The next one is around digital inclusion. This is a real risk for our residents of Staffordshire. If I think about my 82-year-old Nan, during COVID, she started doing her online shopping. I had to sit there, I had to help her learn and understand how to do that. And that's not uncommon, and this is genuinely a challenge that we will face. What we want to do is work with our community groups and be much more in touch with residents around how we can connect that through our libraries and how we can support people to be able to access digital technology. I think it's important to note that we probably might never ensure that everyone across Staffordshire is completely digitally included, but I do feel it's our job to try and support that as best as we can, and that is why this needs to be an important feature of our strategy. The next one is around digital data. So we know, and all of us know, there are lots and lots of pieces of data that exist just across the council. That's before we even think about the partnership as a whole. One of the things that we want to do as part of the strategy is how do we connect that digitally? How can we move to a single view of a resident on the things that we already know about our residents across Staffordshire? And last but not least is the pilots that I talked to you about today. And them are the 4 pilots that we're looking to pilot. But as we move forward, one of the things we want to think about is what does that pipeline for Staffordshire look like? Ian's just articulated, we don't want the teenager's bedroom of lots of little things that nobody uses. We want to really focus our efforts on the key things and the main things that will not only bring efficiencies for the council, but bring a better way of working and residents accessing our council services. That is everything on the strategy. What would be really helpful is what does that feel like? Is there anything that you feel that we've missed? Is there anything you want us to go through in a bit more detail?
Thank you, Liz. That's appreciated. Thank you. Do we have any questions? Councillor Yates. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And first of all, congratulations on your new post. Yeah, very interesting. I've got a couple of comments to make. One is there's very much an overlap between this item on the agenda and the next item on the agenda, because obviously the digital transformation and how we interface customers is very key. I would like to see, and I'll probably question whether to raise this on this part of the agenda or the second part of the agenda, but one of them is making sure that when our residents or customers, as you like to call them, go onto our website to use it, and I'm looking at the customer-facing part, they can almost be able to ask a question the way they would ask a question to one of us councillors face-to-face. Because sometimes navigating the website to actually find the right reporting form or the right bit of information is lost within the amount of text and things which is there. And I've just done a couple of exercises while I've been on just to test the website out. And one of the things which you get, which is a report, if you type in the language of that report, you get 48, 59 different answers, and you have to click through to get the hierarchy of those answers to find out which one it is. And I think in some respects the use of chat boxes does iron that out. Certainly my experiences with chat boxes 18 months ago was pretty dreadful, but my recent experience of chat boxes, they've come on absolute leaps and bounds. And the important thing is with the ones I've been using is that when they have a phrase which they don't understand, they do pass you over to a real person. So it's getting that interface right, not only in the way that you can search in real language, you know, as opposed to council speak, but also there is that ability to, at the earliest possible stage where difficulty is identified by AI, it does go to a human being. And coming on to human beings, we haven't got to lose sight as that there is a reasonable percentage of our residents who either haven't got appropriate access to the internet, either through availability of the internet or availability of the connectivity and whatever. So we do need not to lose sight that there will always be that typical call centre approach, typical, you know, approach which sometimes defaults to councillors, which we don't mind because that's what we live for, so to speak. But it's those aspects which do sort of concern me. And the final thing is breaking down silos. I mean, one of the frustrations which I have, and it must be shared by other councillors, is that at the moment, you sort of think you've got a common path for something, and you find that that isn't the path, but it doesn't sort of trickle down to where it should go. And I think that approach where you can work using the computer to use real language would actually tell you where to go, but potentially inform back. So it's the feedback loop, so everybody knows.
Thanks very much for those comments and questions. I think it's very difficult to envisage how we'll need to engage differently in the future using technology. And you're right, maybe it's a good idea if we were all to stand in our kitchen and able to ask Alexa, when is my pothole going to be filled? That would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Is that a priority for us? Maybe it is. But I'm kind of interested in how does this change the way we live, and how can we assist that? So people, you know, with dementia, or people with other social care needs, or children needs and things like that, how can we improve those situations through this technology? Should that be our priority? Given that those sort of things will come in our direction anyway, won't they? The thing that I'm sceptical about is that, you know, when all cars went through the same wind tunnel and they were designed in the same way, and then they started to all look the same, you wonder whether there is a lack of scope of difference in terms of where is the human input in terms of how we shape these things, because almost AI will dictate, as you were saying, the route you take is this, and you end up looking like that, and everybody else looks like that. And actually there's no variety, there's no choice, there's no design, there's no innovation. It's just our given. And I think we need to guard against that a little bit, and that, you know, there's a human aspect to all of this. So thanks for the questions. I think you're right. Lindsay, is there anything I've missed or you want to add, or John, sorry?
Just 2 points. I think chatbots are a really good point, and I think I've seen the way that they've developed the last couple of years personally as well. And back to the point I made at the beginning, this is about us all continuously learning and thinking about what that means for us and the residents of Staffordshire. And I think Ian's point around, you know, how do we support residents in the best possible way? The co-pilot example that I briefly talked through is a really good example of, when we think about our staff and our officers, do we want them doing the things that something else can do? Or do we want them visiting families, visiting people, visiting residents, and keeping that real specialist skill? So the things that we're looking at is absolutely about that efficiency and supporting better outcomes for residents of Staffordshire.
Thank you, Liz. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, and congratulations. Thank you. Very interesting topic this is for me, can I say? I'm not the best whiz kid when it comes to technology. But it's not so much questions probably, but you might find a question in what I'm going to say. You talked earlier, Councillor Parry, about your young youth when you thought you were going to fly off to with that pack on your back, etc. Sorry. I think that's what we're becoming, actually. Young people are becoming robots with lack of communication skills, which is concerning, in my opinion. Talking as a bit of an oldie, sorry. That's my point on this one. I'm asking you, please, I know it's necessary we move with the times and we have to have this strategy in place. I understand that. But please don't rush the population out there, particularly our ageing population, when it comes to technology. They've still got a lot to learn when it comes to this. And yes, younger children, the grandchildren, etc., might be their support in this, but sometimes they need that communication, visual communication, which is concerning because we're getting less and less of it. I only had this conversation with somebody in the bank, would you believe, the other day. I actually talked to this person and he talked to me and he was saying exactly the same. It was nice for me to go in there and have a conversation, whether it be about the weather or what, it doesn't matter. It was a conversation and it just lifts you. But I think we're becoming as I say, a bit of a robotic society. And I'm just asking that I know we've got to have it in place, but please don't rush our population out there in thinking that this is it and they've got nobody to talk to. I'm sorry if I've not, I support what you're doing, don't get me wrong, but I think there's a need to sort of just think about it a little bit. As I say, we're an ageing population and we need to consider those people that are used to the normal skills of communication, which is face-to-face. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz, did you want to come back in on that or? No, thank you. Councillor Pert?
Good morning and congratulations. Can I just make a variety of points? Firstly, I was interested in this self-assessment that has been done about where the council is in terms of digital maturity and being at stage 1 and 2. I think that's a useful starting place because to try and map a route forward and not accurately represent where we are today, I think is a mistake many organisations make. I think it's also, you always want to come and forward and say, well, we're more advanced than we really are, and in this case, we're a council. I wouldn't have expected us to be stage 4, so I think that's a useful starting point. Secondly, I hope we can integrate the strategy development that has been laid out with some of the existing work strands and procurement that is going on. I would hate to see this juggernaut going in one direction, ignoring the fact that there is some really important work, particularly in health and social care, that is going on, which will probably have a longevity of 10 or 20 years. So please, can you make sure those strands of activity are integrated fully so that we don't go down one route for existing activity and then pull the plug later on, because that would just be a waste of time and energy. Thirdly, I think it only came out in the questions and then right at the end of the conversation. It felt like this was an organisational drive to do something, and I was struggling to find the customer or the resident's voice. And it came out more in the questioning, and I would encourage you to really look for those opportunities that don't just benefit the organisation, actually they benefit the resident more. And so a couple of examples of that. In adult social care, the health service has moved into virtual wards, doing some of the observations and making sure people have taken their medicines. We could quite easily do that in adult social care using technology today. I can't ensure it's enforced, but we can do that. Another example, on highways today, we can put trackers on not trackers on vehicles, we can put cameras on vehicles that see and check the state of the highway. These are really easy things to do, and suddenly it would transform what we're doing. It doesn't need to be part of a grandiose big strategy, and we should take those quick wins that are out there because other people are doing it. The single view of the customer and data sharing, I think, to me, is the big win here. And partnership only really came out at the end of the discussion. And for me, the really, really big win is the public sector focusing its resource on the right people. You know, because we have families and people who are in are in need of our support and services, but they're also in need of the health services support and services and the district and borough councils. And, you know, many of the people are exactly the same. So please can I really encourage you to take that partnership approach and go the extra mile. I know the health service are the world's worst at collaborating outside of their system. But you know, I think the real benefit is in that single view. The final thing I just wanted to mention was about risk, because trying to get up that curve to greater digital maturity, or trying to change the culture of the organisation so risk is so that we are more fleet of foot, also has the potential downside of opening up the organisation to greater risk. And there is a lot of really sensitive data that we hold that I would hate to find that Staffordshire was one of the first councils to have been hacked and data being shared everywhere. There's a council in Scotland, from memory, Dumfries and Galloway, who lost a whole rook of records in the last month. It happens, and the impact is catastrophic. And I would encourage just a realistic assessment on the corporate risk register, because people need to be taking some of the decisions in terms of data and IT with that sort of backdrop of what's the benefit on one side and what's the risk on the other side. Didn't really talk today much about the downside in terms of that risk. And it's not to say don't do it, it's just to say I think we just need to factor in sufficient controls to make sure that we don't find all of the council systems go down because of something that has been unforeseen. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Perry.
Thank you. It's quite all right, Chair. Councillor Burt, those are really, really valuable comments and questions. If I could work backwards. Cybersecurity is obviously of paramount importance to the organisation, and we have a strong team on that in terms of ensuring, and you know, members know, there was a cyber breach recently, of which we are still investigating in terms of how we who's culpable and how we lock down around those sort of things. So I can assure you that this is something that is taken absolutely seriously, as it is by all public sector organisations and probably all private commercial organisations these days. Otherwise, we'd be fools not to, wouldn't we? We know that a lot of it is state-sponsored and sophisticated. This is not, sorry to talk about teenage bedrooms, but this is not emanating from teenage bedrooms. This is emanating from sophisticated sources. So I can only give you assurance that you can never say this will never happen, because all software is developing, and people know how to attack it. In terms of the strategy itself and risk, I think that's an absolutely paramount question to ask. And the risks, I think, are what you've cited, really. It's not necessarily the risks of failure. It's the risks often of duplication, and that we don't get that partnership stuff right, and that over here somebody's doing this and over here somebody's doing that, and they don't talk and they don't work. And so, it becomes cumbersome, it becomes difficult, and it works against what people need and want. So I think that is a really vital point that we need to take on board in our thinking on this, in terms of how do we de-risk some of this in terms of avoidance of duplication and not working in close partnership with people. That's a really strong point for us. Thank you for that. Going back to, you know, this is kind of a juggernaut coming down and it's going to sort of wipe things in its wake. I can assure this is not a juggernaut, Chair. This is a people carrier. And what we've got to do is to try and take people along and help people. It's an enabler in many senses, but we've got to understand what it is. How do we apply this? Is it worth applying? How does it fit? How does it fit with the strategy? Because there's no such thing as digital maturity. Our strategy will be out of date tomorrow morning because it needs refreshing on that sort of level of pace. So no such thing as digital maturity, no such thing of having achieved it, no such thing as the end game being reached. This is continuous, often marginal improvement of how do we use things to improve. And it could well be very low-tech solutions providing great big answers. So we're not chasing after toys. We're looking for solutions that will make things better, and how do we apply them? So I think your comments are really strong, and we take those on board. I'm going to hand over to Lindsay because I'm sure there's loads of things I've missed that you want to respond to, but really do value that challenge.
I agree. Thank you for your comments, Councillor Pert. Just very briefly, so on slide 4 where we list the organisational challenges, absolutely spot on around that interdependencies, and that is one of the challenges that we've found. As I said at the beginning, lots of great work already happens in Staffordshire. I think the bit we need to get better at is how do we connect that through to other departments. If it's working well in health and care, might that work well in children's as well? And that is absolutely where we want to be, around that connectivity. And the point around the data, absolutely, that is why this needs to be a pillar of this strategy. And it's really difficult to articulate everything in just a few slides, but lots of great work is already happening there as well. We've got the Staffordshire Centre for Data Analytics, which you'll see is one of the key components in that pillar, and that's doing absolutely what you've set out, Councillor Pert, around that partnership data. How do we bring that together? What we do know is that risk element of that, and absolutely we need to be really clear around the IGU challenges that we will face as we progress with this strategy and the data work. To date, what we've been doing is dealing with each one on a case-by-case basis and thinking about what's the potential organisational risk and making decisions accordingly. But I think it is a fair point. That risk will never go away, but it's how we react and deal with that on an individual case-by-case basis.
Councillor Pert.
Can I just come back? Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Parry, in your response, you just evoked another thought that I had, which was, and I think this does go hand in hand with digital maturity. I hope we don't go down the route of many public sector organisations of saying we've got to bespoke everything because our needs are unique, and because in reality that was a strategy, a failed strategy of pumping lots of money into the IT sector because you needed expensive people to be able to write these things and integrate them across the whole of your platforms. So I hope that we don't go down that route and we simplify things for our residents as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for that. Can I just ask a couple of questions? Thank you. The one I've had is, all this is really good, and I do tend to agree with Councillor Perry, is how you're going to capture that one person that may need us more than everybody put together. How will you capture that person?
I'm not sure we will capture one person, if I'm being really honest. I think what we can do, and the assurance that we can give you today as part of the developing strategy, is we will absolutely try our best to understand from a resident perspective if this is difficult for them. We know, and back to Councillor Pert's point around interconnectivity, We know that there's already other developing strategies that will support us as an organisation. So the customer strategy is here to talk today, and the developing community strategy will also be really important and they all connect together. So I think my ask is not to look at this as just one strategy. This is one part of our organisational aims. But I think it is a really good question in the sense of, will we know that one person, perhaps who could live in a rural area? I think our assurances will absolutely try our best to connect to as many residents as we can through this.
Thank you. Did you just want to talk us through your next steps then? And then, if everybody's quite happy with what the questions, no more further ones? Nigel? I mean, Ms. Councillor Yates, I do apologise. Councillor Davis, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I had a presentation last week of the refurbishment of the library. And it's significant now that it's clearly more than just books. And the emphasis is being put on to IT and to supporting members of the public. They're going to be welcome to come in. The equipment's there. They can bring some of their own equipment if they want to. So I think that's one way we can get to some people that need a little bit of support.
Thank you. Did you want to talk through the next steps?
Next steps on the screen.
Yes.
Chair.
What do you intend to bring?
Timetable is there in terms of this has come to you today. It goes to SLT in June, pre-cabinet, and then full cabinet for approval in July. This is the get-go, really, Chair. This is not the accomplished. This is just a plan. We've got to implement it, and there's a lot of work. And just to reassure some of the comments, also, you know, as Lindsay was saying, we want to be fast followers in many respects. So we don't want to be the ones that take all the risks and some of this stuff. We'll borrow if we need to. But this is the start of the journey. Well, it's not the start because there's all sorts of things already happening, quite exciting pilots and projects and experiments going on. But we'll need to bring it back to you, Chair, I suspect, on a regular basis so that you can, again, test and track how this is developing, particularly because some of the concerns that members have expressed this morning about how does this affect the individual, how does this affect across the demographics of Staffordshire, how does this affect the risk and our relationships with partners, etc. So I think we would need to and would appreciate your challenge on this.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation, Liz. That's appreciated. Thank you. Okay, we're now moving on to customer experience strategy update, and I believe that is Councillor Parry again.
Oh, I think we've got some officers coming in.
You have us. Okay, thank you.
They're behind.
Would you just like to introduce your officers?
This is Tracy Thorley, and forgive me, Emily Dorbar, who I suspect has been the author of this report largely. Under your expertise and guidance, Mrs. Thorley, no doubt, obviously a team effort, nothing to do with me. So continuing that kind of technical theme in a way, Chair, we've now got our customer experience strategy, our plan. And I apologise a little bit because it does feel a bit like a textbook on customer care and customer service. And that's because I think what we've done here is sweep up a lot of the science and behavioural science and psychology that goes behind this for us to be able to understand how our relationships with customers varies in so many different ways. If we think about the county council and its complexity and the way it and the products and the services that it delivers. So if you're a library customer, for example, you have choice. You have discretion over whether you use that service and what you do. You could go and buy a book in Waterstones, or you could borrow a library book. You don't really have much choice about whether your pothole gets fixed by us or, you know, ABC potholes down the road. You have no choice, or very little choice. So you can see our relationship management with customers will be quite varied, and we'll need to understand across the organisation how those relationships, how those moments of truth in terms of those relationships changes and differs. And so this is really about understanding the science, if you like, and the psychology that goes behind all of that, and trying from that to craft out a different and newer approach, and modern techniques involved here in terms of how do we understand and how to deliver that customer experience. So we're not Disneyland, and we're not Ryanair either. We are a council, so we have to understand what is service in our world, what does that look like, what are the expectations of our service users, and what is reasonably deliverable or providable within a cost envelope, etc. Some of the questions you might want to ask about this, scrutiny questions, is, so what? Why is the world different? Why has it changed? And what's the cost benefit here? Because we haven't given you, and I'm going to be asking, we haven't given you yet, what is the cost of change here? What does it take to actually implement all of this? And what are we going to get out of it? And how will we know what success looks like? And all those sort of great scrutiny questions. So I'm kind of I'm kind of loading the weapon for you a little bit, because I really we would value your feedback on this very much. So I'm going to hand over to Tracy Thirst. Mrs. Thorne, so sorry.
Thank you. So we're just going to take you through, rather than taking you through the report, we've just done a quick presentation to try and draw out more of a discussion, to be honest. As Councillor Parry said, we're right at the beginning of this journey, so we genuinely want to hear your feedback. We genuinely want that input from you to help to shape what the strategy can look like and what the action plan needs to be, and where we need to focus. And hopefully we can answer some of the questions as we've gone through the presentation. So if I can, I would ask if we can keep questions to the end, and then happy to go back and cover any of the questions you've got. So for me, there are four questions we want you to think about today, which are within the report. So the first one, so as we're taking you through the presentation, if you wouldn't mind just keeping these in your mind, is around that, okay, how we've defined what the customer experience is, the Staffordshire one, and what we've used to come up with what that looks like. Is that right? Because you're the representatives of the people of Staffordshire, the same as we are. We're, residents as well. So are we looking at the key things, and are we focusing on the areas that are important to the people of Staffordshire? The second one then is we're proposing to use a maturity model to be able to look holistically where the organisation is, but then to be able to target some of the key services and build their own maturity model, which I'll go through shortly. So again, can you have a look whether from your point of view you do feel it is Staffordshire and customer centric enough? The next one then is your comments on the roadmap. So this is our plan of how we get from A to B. But can I be really clear, this isn't an overnight thing, this isn't a short term, this will take us a long time to go through this journey. But we need to make sure we're focusing on the right areas, as Councillor Parry said, on where's the return on investment in this? If we're spending time in doing it, what is the benefit? Some of it, there won't be financial benefit, it's the benefit for the customer. And that's what we're looking at all the time. Are we making it easier? And that's why we sat in the previous presentation, because the two are so interlinked. What we're doing on the digital strategy and what we're doing are so aligned. And then the third and final one then is around, okay, what we're saying we're going to deliver as part of this programme, is that enough? Have we been ambitious enough Does it push where you feel we need to push? So like I say, I really would appreciate your input, feedback, comments to make sure, is this fit for purpose for Staffordshire? Because we have used models from the Institute and learning from others, but we need to make sure this is right for Staffordshire. So just a real quick whistle-stop tour of why we got here was really, we'd already been looking at this post-COVID. We recognised during COVID there was a gap about understanding our communities and what our communities needed. So we've spent time, as Lindsay said previously, there is a community strategy where we're starting to look at that. Emergency planning sits with me and my responsibility as well. So we're looking at how do we bring communities in. So there's many strands that need to interlink as part of this strategy. So we've already done some of that thinking. We're just at the point now where we've started to put those thoughts down in a plan. And again, like I say, we'd appreciate your feedback on it. We then obviously had a new chief exec who then commissioned us to do an assessment of the council. So we needed a benchmark. Where are we starting from to understand where have we moved to? And at the minute, we don't fully understand where we're at. So that's the bit that hopefully we're going to take you through. Because it is really difficult, as Councillor Parry says, we are a very complex organisation and a complex residents who have got different needs and different thoughts about what they mean by customer, resident. We all use different language. So how do we measure something if we aren't all calling it the same thing and we aren't all thinking of it in the same way? We've then also we've got many customers that we serve who have got different interests. And how do we consistently get that customer voice? And there's a lot, don't think that there isn't good work going on. There's lots of good work going on, but are we doing it in a consistent way? And are we sharing that intel that we're getting across the different services to drive the different strategies that we've got? Understanding our culture, and then what resource constraints have we got? We've only got a finite amount of resource, as we know, and are we using it the best and most efficient way? So, with regard to the approach, what we've started to do is, and this goes to some of the questions that you said earlier, is how do we differentiate ourselves, but making sure that we are customer-centric? So what is the proposition? So for us, some of the key areas are about winning that customer trust, earning customers who are advocates of the county council. And I'm talking in the widest sense. You're obviously some advocates, but we've got staff as well for the services we're delivering. We need them to be advocates because they're residents as well. Are they going out and are the service users actually singing our praises and seeing the benefit of what we do? We probably don't know in some areas because we don't know how to ask that question. Look at reducing demands and hopefully complaints as well. So are we fixing things first time? Have we got those things? Is the website accessible for people? Are we being transparent with the data? There's lots of elements, again, like I say, that sort of feed into this. And then increasing the customer satisfaction. So for us, it is about making sure we're listening to customers. Are we designing something that is customer-centric? We've got the right processes. We're putting the effort where it needs to be with the customer. And are we increasing that customer satisfaction? So that's part of the work. We're trying to look at some of the quick wins. So we've rolled this out as part of the highways transformation that we're doing. So it's a very different way that we're doing it with highways than we have traditionally, which I'll let Emily obviously cover as part of hers. And then it is, how are we reaching those hard to reach customers who aren't interacting with us? So again, we need to think about, for the services we support, how are we interacting with people and getting their feedback? Whether that be they aren't digitally enabled, whether that be they live in the rural, whether that be they just have no reason to interact with us at the minute or don't know the services that we provide. So how do we start to have a plan to address that? And then using a lot of the existing data and insight to be able to prioritise. So again, making sure we're targeting the areas what really do need to be focused on. So I'll hand over to Emily and let Emily take you through the strategy and the approach.
Thank you. So we're looking at basing the strategy on three really important pillars. The first one being our operational delivery. So really understanding how innovative we are, how agile our operational delivery is, and making sure that we really are using insight from the customer's voice to improve our processes in the way we do things, in the way we deliver things to residents. The second relates to our organisational culture and the engagement of our people. A really positive and customer-centric culture is really important and essential in an environment where our employees feel motivated and empowered. They're better able to deliver services in an exceptional way. And finally, the third pillar focuses on the overarching strategy and the leadership within the organisation. Let's be honest, our leaders play a really crucial role in setting the vision and aligning teams and driving that innovation and making sure that the customer is present in the way that we do things here in Staffordshire. By integrating those three pillars into our strategy, we believe we really are laying a good and solid foundation for a customer-centric approach that goes beyond the transactions that we do and is more about the service we provide to very important people. One of the first objectives for this programme of work will be around defining what we mean by the Staffordshire customer experience, and that's one of the questions we're posing today, is to gather your thoughts. We really want to understand what feelings and emotions our residents want to experience when they're interacting with us, with our services here at Staffordshire. And we want to create a consistent approach to the way that we deliver services across very different service types. This was discussed in the previous session, and Tracy picked up on this earlier too, but really understanding and recognising the term customer means many different things to different people at this organisation, and to put it simply, it's the people that benefit from the work that we do. That could be a service user, a volunteer, a colleague, a resident or a customer, but it really is the people that benefit from the work that we do, and helping to unify that across the organisation will be really important. Tracy, would you like to go through the maturity model?
Yes. How can we measure the benefit of the work that we're doing and making sure services are thinking about the right things? So this is a standard maturity model, but what it gives us, we feel, is a sort of a visibility and a way of tracking. Sounds a negative word. It isn't about that. It's about supporting the services to be able to plan, define, develop, measure, and then deliver what a good customer experience journey looks like. So at the minute, you've probably got services that are very good at the job they do, but are they thinking about the customer's journey through that? Highways is a perfect example. Previously, we'd have probably taken feedback at the beginning and the end of a process. What we've now started to do is do it through the journey, so we understand at what point do we need to tweak something and possibly change a process to make it easier for the customer. So for us, we're using this model, and then there's a bit more of an explanation there on the next slide, just to show what each service. If I can just bring your eyes to the bottom, what we're trying to do as part of this is close that loop. So for me, it's about each service area, there'll be an assessment, so a benchmark of their area, because, you know, there's only one Emily to be able to do this, so she can't, so we need the subject matter experts in their field to do this, but we're there to support them, to take them through the process, pathway, whatever you want to call it. So there'll be an assessment that starts off. We will then look at that against a quality framework, which is from the Institute of Customer Service. What that gives us is what Councillor Parry referred to earlier. It's not just benchmarking ourselves against other local authorities. We want to benchmark ourselves against the best at customer service, whether that be Amazon, whether that be a utility, you know, whatever it is. Let's start to benchmark ourselves against those. And again, it's your feedback of who do we feel are the people out there who do customer really well, and how can we go and learn from them? So we can use the Institute to help us to do that. Then the service will be expected to do an action plan with KPIs within there, so smart objectives, being really clear what is the benefit of them doing this, what is the problem we're trying to solve, and what is the solution, which can then be tested and yes, it's right, or actually it needs to be tweaked this way. And then we're providing training for them and support for them, so we're giving them to start to think about that customer first. And then it's that reassessment. So again, it's that, let's review that maturity model and where they sit. Because we'll be doing it, and each service will have their own report, well, at WLT level, what we can then do is we can look at that holistically across directorates and then the whole organisation. So it starts to give us that intel as to, okay, it's this area we need to focus on, but at the minute we need that benchmark. So if Emily just takes you through the roadmap that we've got, we are near the end now.
So we've shared with you the roadmap, which demonstrates, you know, sort of visually our long-term plan. You can see that there's an awful lot of activity that's planned in this first quarter from April to June. That really is our desire to seek to understand our current position, to really establish our benchmarks, to set up the strategies and the documents that will be needed to drive this forward, with some further activity happening in the next quarter in July to September. I'm going to just share with you a little bit more information around the Institute of Customer Service. So it's something that we're quite passionate about and we think will really help us in it to achieve our aims. We are, Staffordshire as an organisation, are members of the Institute of Customer Services, and through that membership we're able to aspire to achieve something called a service mark, which is a national standard and it's independently recognised, and it demonstrates an organisation's commitment to its customer service, but importantly upholding a really high standard as part of a long-term embedded strategy. Some of the benefits to achieving that service mark really do include, as Tracy was talking about, our ability to benchmark ourselves nationally against similar organisations, so other local authorities or comparable organisations like utilities, but also against private sector organisations. But it unlocks for us the ability to get access to really meaningful customer data. We're able, through this journey and through this aspiration, to initiate a customer feedback exercise as well as an employee feedback exercise, and we actually launched that on the 25th of March, so a few weeks ago. Over 2,500 residents in Staffordshire volunteered to take part of this survey, and we've already received around a 15% return rate, and that survey is still open, and that's where customers are giving us feedback to Staffordshire on a range of topics that are benchmarked by the Institute. And we'll be launching our employee survey, which will help us to understand how important the customer is in the way each of our services have designed their offerings. We'll be launching that in 3 weeks at the end of April. So we really are positioning ourselves well to gather as much information as possible to really understand our starting point and start to really meaningfully action plan going forward. And in that action plan and through those surveys, we're going to get access to metrics that we've never had before here in Staffordshire. And I believe, and hopefully through your feedback, I'll understand your position, I believe are really meaningful and will provide a lot. So not just how satisfied our customers are, but how often we get it right first time, which I think we would all, hopefully we would all agree is a priority for our customers, that we get it right. We'll be able to understand the customer effort score. So how easy are we to do business with across all the different services we deliver? And in our employee survey, we'll understand how easy our staff think they are to do business with. And I think we're going to see some interesting results to see which of those align and which don't. And it's those disparities that we'll use to prioritise the people we work with first. Ultimately, the end aspiration is by next year, by 2025, that we would be able to understand our current position, make significant improvements and smart objectives that deliver real-life improvements so that next year we achieve this service mark accreditation. I am a little nervous at putting a date on that because it means I've got to try and deliver it, but I'm confident that we could do that. So I know we've covered quite a lot today, but that's the end of our slides, and we'd like to open to your feedback and comments, please.
Thank you. Councillor Pert.
Thank you, Chair. Can I... First question, thank you for the presentation. First question is, when next year are you going to achieve this service mark? Because if you give me an open net or an open goal, I'll take it.
We do have defined dates. So we've triggered the survey this year in March for external public and April for internal employees, which means we'll use the same anniversary dates next year. We'll receive the results from that effort next year around June to July. So we'll know towards the end of July if we're on track to achieve it.
Okay, that was more confusing than it could have been. Are you not saying that you'll have achieved it by July, I think is what you're saying. You will know whether you're on track to achieve it, but not necessarily have achieved it.
Yes, that's right. Sorry. There will be an if we have achieved a high enough score in our results, then the Institute will come and visit us and assess to make the decision. So if I will have achieved the results to initiate that assessment by July, and then we'll book the assessment before the end of the year.
Thank you. Okay, so let me just go on to the salient bits that I just wanted to pick up. First of all, I think it was Peter Drucker, the management consultant, who talked about culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it does strike me that, you know, the two agenda items this morning are extraordinarily linked. And the fundamental piece that needs to underpin them is that cultural change. Because without the cultural change, there's no point in doing any of the other bits and pieces. So I guess my first salient question is, are you doing a temperature check, an assessment on the organisation's culture? Because you talk about a £500 million organisation, which has a number of big disparate departments and some subcontractors or service providers who support some of those as well. I'm thinking specifically about Amy in this case. I think it'd be really useful to have a cultural temperature check as part of the work. Because there will be some laggards in an organisation of this size and some people are racing out ahead, and trying to understand those might be a worthwhile thing to do. Second of all, I guess from a customer point of view, you know, I'm interested in communication when I want it, but equally accurate communication. And I sometimes find that there are parts of the organisation who say one thing and actually it's not fundamentally true. I can think of a pothole I struggled for months to get resolved. It picked up car after car after car, and I kept getting communication which said it had been sorted out 2 years before. It was clearly not the case, and nothing upsets. I prefer to have no communication. Because I can work out whether I'm driving over the road, whether it's been sorted or not. I prefer to have no communication rather than communication that is not timely and not accurate. It upsets residents no end of times. And actually, sometimes a timeline of when we're going to commit to do something might be also quite helpful. The other 2 points I just want to make. One is in terms of your program governance. I think you might want to put overview and scrutiny somewhere on that slide, unless it is there and I've just missed it. And finally, I listened to you talk, and when I see organisations going through this radical change, often they bring in their own customer experience expert, somebody who's been and done it. You know, from the best organisations, whether it's Amazon, Virgin Airlines, Virgin Trains, Zopa, Chase, and I wonder whether, with the importance of these 2 programmes, and I'm not sure what the cost benefit will be from these, but I don't think we have much choice but to go down this route, in fairness. But it does strike me that I'm surprised you haven't brought in your own customer experience expert, you know, at director level, who's done this all over the place and is the world-renowned expert on this. That does surprise me. Thank you.
Chair, I'm really grateful again to Councillor Perk for such insightful and challenging questions. I like the culture piece and the reference to Drucker. Some of this does remind me, going back 20 years to do my MBA, and the countless, endless case studies. And the one I'm reminded of is I think it was SAS Airlines, Scandinavian Airlines, and where they talked about moments of truth. And in our organisation, there are so many moments of truth, and they do depend on microcultures within the organisation. So there will be a microculture in one part of the organisation who are used to responding in a different way, because, you know, they can't reach that level of excellence of customer service. They can give you a considered response, and we know what we're talking about here, don't we? And there will be other places where I'm sure when people walk into our new history centre, they will receive a 5-star, gold-plated customer experience, that they will, all the feedback they'll give you will be perfect and lovely and fluffy and all those sort of things. But that's another microculture in the organisation. And to be able to understand, in a sense, what is an acceptable level of service in that moment of truth, in that interaction? What is acceptable? And I think we need to understand some of that and be quite practical and prosaic about these things, that we're not aiming for something which is not deliverable, because we are not John Lewis or an airline or any of those sort of things. They're kind of one-product organisations. We're not a product-based organisation. We have multiple services with multiple moving parts in them, and we're not out necessarily to draw customers to us through good customer service. That's the worst thing that can happen. If you draw people to you because you give them the great customer service, what we're trying to do is manage demand. And managing demand sometimes means you have to make choices that, I'm sorry, but you'll have to wait your turn in the queue. And it feels a bit bureaucratic, and it feels a little bit not very customer service orientated and all those things. But practically, we have nothing else to do, because we have 1,000 people, we have a finite resource, and we've got to be able to get through it. And we can use technology, and we can do all the things we want to do. But at the end of the day, we have to manage that demand. And it sometimes isn't necessarily gold-plated customer service that goes with it. However, we do have to try harder at that, don't we? We do have to try harder at those microcultures. We do have to try harder at making the experience not feel like, you know, it's a 1940s bureaucracy kind of experience, that actually we do care, and we are trying to do it better, and we are trying to improve. But these are things that I think are part of the learning experience of doing some of this stuff, that we're not trying to be, you know, best in class at customer service. We're trying to improve what we do.
Thank you. Councillor Pert, are you quite happy with that?
I think Tracy wanted to come in first, and
I was just going to answer a couple of the other questions. So with regard to the culture change, that is part of the assessment. So as part of the questions that go out, especially internally, is around what is our employees customer-centric, and we'll start to see where are those hotspots by some of the questions. So it is quite a big, I can't remember how many questions, about 80 odd questions within it, and a big chunk of those are around the culture. So that was just in response to the culture change. I would say the governance piece, yeah, hands up, that slide is what we're currently working within, but now since the commission, we need to then look at what is the governance arrangements, and as we've said, because it's linked to the other strategies that are going on, it's what can we bring together instead of having 10 different boards. How can we join some of those things together and just bring one report? And it might be one report that covers data, customer, digital, all together, so that you can see those linkages. So at the minute, that's what we're working within. That's not to say, but we have got it as a note to say, is overview and scrutiny the best place for it to come to? And then with regard to the consultant, until we have the benchmark and the results back, we don't know who we need to bring in, because we don't know what the problem is we're trying to solve. The Institute of Customer Service is our subject matter expert, in essence. We're using them and their framework, but once we understand that's the area we need to focus, we can then reflect and say, have we got that knowledge or capacity within, or do we need to bring it in? So I don't want to do it at this stage, because as we know, it costs money, and we might be able to do it ourselves to a point, and then bring very targeted support in.
Thank you all, very fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yates.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just come back on one of Councillor Parry's comments. Don't disagree with him about not always being able to deliver a gold standard of service delivery. But the thing which becomes important then is communication and engagement. I mean, we will all have as councillors, residents who contact us. I'll use the example of a pothole, and you can't get it fixed straight away, but acknowledgement that A, this is how they can report it themselves, or B, this is how and when it was reported and how it's categorised, and a promise to sort of follow up is usually gratefully received. So you don't have to have that gold standard, as long as instead of that, as long as instead of that it comes back to communication and engagement, which is key. The other thing I'll pick up is that it's funny how all these presentations, customer experience, customer scorecard, customer engagement, none of us use the term customer. We use the term resident. And the reason I say that is that if you look at page 34, 7.c, it says subconscious experience. We've all seen pens chained to banks, and that subconsciously is the bank. I think sometimes we're dealing with residents, and to a lesser extent, we're dealing with businesses within Stafford who contact us, and they don't see it as a customer experience. They see it as residents getting assistance from their council, of which they own, and they're a part. So, and I had the same issue with social housing providers, where they don't call them tenants, they call them customers. And I think there's that separation of corporateness, which is unnecessary. So I think customer in this context comes under that subconscious experience, which I don't think is always positive. There might be a coverall, but in certain points it may be more relevant to change, because the relationship between our residents is different to a customer going into Aldi or clicking on to buy something from Amazon or whatever. So that's a thought which always grinds on me a little bit. The other thing is national benchmarking. I think there is scope for tremendous collaboration, and therefore collaboration efficiency savings. You know, in some respects, we develop policies within Staffordshire. We perhaps, you know, Google and look at other policies and do a lot of research and things and go on seminars and things. But the reality of it is our policy will always be slightly different to somebody else's policy. In some cases, that might be absolutely relevant and absolutely right. In other cases, it may not be. You know, for example, British Gas, you deal with British Gas the same whether you're in Kent or whether you're in the Highlands of Scotland, so to speak, and all ports call in between. And an example of that is we found in our administration, Staffordshire Moorlands has got a linkage with High Peak, we've developed policies which, and we've been told by officers, oh, we do that already in High Peak. So the first thing we've done is say, can we do the High Peak one exactly the same? So if the officer crosses the border, he doesn't have to twitch and twinge and decide that something's different. And that would allow you to look and search for collaborative best practice. And I'm sure you do it to a greater or lesser extent. But at the same time, produce an efficiency saving that you not starting off with a blank piece of paper and having a team of officers unavailable for doing other things. And one of the things which I bring up many times, again with regard to potholes, which is pertinent to us, is I look at how other councils report, and there is quite a significant difference. And some of them are very good. Some of them aren't as good as Staffordshire. But within there, that to me is a perfect example where collaboration or consortium approach, like we're doing with the EV vehicle charging with Levi, we found that there's the economies of scale and things and the efficiency savings there. So I'd like to see that sort of looked at and brought into the benchmarking, not just benchmarking on KPIs, are we achieving that, but benchmarking to say, is that the best way of doing it? Is that the most efficient way of doing it? And the final point I was going to raise was about KPIs. And I presume the KPIs are covered in the scorecard, which is put up on the screens at the moment, and that's fine. But one of the things, and it links into the digital strategy, is that if we're engaging by linking in on the computer interface, on the digital interface, that gives us the opportunity, because that person has filled a form and sent something off, to actually come up straight away of how was your experience of dealing with the council? You know, was it positive, was it negative, what were the comments, what are the improvements which could be made? And that is real time. Sometimes they're dismissed, sometimes they're just a tick box exercise, but every now and again you do pick up a gem. And I'm sure all those commercial organisations who do that don't do that to give it lip service, they do that because that actually generates ideas for further and continuous improvement.
Thank you, Chair. And Councillor Yates, thank you very much for your questions and comments. The description customer, I agree with you. It doesn't quite fit the bill, does it? You know, because I'm sure in parts of our organisation they probably use terms like client, resident, service user. I'm sure that's the case. I think what we're trying to do is trying to get a lingua franca about this, trying to get a common currency around this, which is, shall we just centre on current customer for the want of a better term. And it's an internal term in a sense, I think. I think you're also right about, this is less about necessarily trying to provide some form of customer service as opposed to providing customer satisfaction. And that again, I think is variable, isn't it? So what you describe, which is my experience as well, that when you go back to somebody and say, look, I can't fix this right now, but I promise you I will stay on it till it is fixed, and I will monitor it and report back to you, often satisfies that person to the extent that they're happy. They're happy to wait, they're happy, and they trust you and confident to be able to do that. It's when they don't get that and they don't feel satisfied and they feel left out and they feel ignored that satisfaction cannot be achieved, and therefore customer service in that sense is failing. And I think that's what we want to try and achieve. But those interactions, those moments of truth are so vast and variable across this organisation. And again, going back to Councillor Pert's point about culture, it isn't flick a switch and let's change the culture. It doesn't work like that, does it? We've got to lead, we've got to show, we've got to walk the talk all the time, and make sure these things fit. I'm a little bit sceptical about benchmarking and KPIs with this, actually. I'd like to test and feel what that level of satisfaction is that we get back. You know, what have we done that's different that makes people think, actually, County Council, you're doing a better job for me. I'm hearing better from you. You're giving me the respect that I expect, and they have greater confidence in us. I appreciate the points there.
Thank you. Councillor Perry?
Just to comment on something you've just said, if you don't mind. I think it's sort of, it's never going to be 100% achievable. The reason being, we're all human. We're not quite that robotic people yet, but we're all humans. So consequently, it depends on who is asking the question and who is answering the question as to whether they'll get a satisfactory conclusion to a problem. So I just think it's important that, and you're right in what you say, that's the most important thing. It's getting that collaboration between the two, the person that's asking and the person that's giving the information back. And that is dependent on the personality of the person that's giving the response and also the attitude of the person that's asking the question, if I've made sense. So just wanted to make that point as it's important. So we're never going to be 100%, but if we can get to 99.9%, that'll be great. But there's always going to be that odd few that don't quite match up together. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of points I'd like to share that I found really interesting. Councillor Yates, around the national benchmarking. So Staffordshire Moorlands and High Peak are also customers of the Institute of Customer Services. Some of our other districts are too. So we've already started sharing data around, I'm waiting for the results from my first survey, but they've been very kind and we're working in partnership to help me understand some of the trends they're seeing, how they're interpreting the results. We share a customer in common and that relationship's going really well. So I'd like to continue that and hopefully that would help provide some more reassurance that although we're benchmarking nationally, we're also benchmarking with organisations that are interacting with our shared customer too. And from a KPI perspective, you commented around the digital strategy and having the opportunity. In the slide pack, Tracy talked about the support that we would give to services under the maturity model. At the bottom, it says around this quality framework and action planning. We have purchased a tool, a customer experience tool that we'll be offering to services so that they can start to capture that customer voice and be able to understand what's coming in. And the web team I've been working with recently to create a survey so that it does pop up at the opportune moments when you use it. So I completely agree and we'll take note of that and make sure that that continues.
Can I just add as well on the benchmarking piece, as Emily said, the national, what it will give us is who are those best in class to allow us to collaborate, whereas at the minute we don't know who they are or which bits we need to work on. So I think once we've done the assessment, we'll understand and we can go back then to the Institute and say who does this really well and build those collaborations together. So that could be, you know, national organisations, could be private, public sector, it could be a culmination of them. On the instant feedback as well, I just wanted to share something with you. The tool that Emily talked about, the registration service sits within my remit as well. And we used to have a really poor response with regard to ceremonies, with regard to feedback. You know, we probably got 2%, if that. It's now increased because we've used this tool and it's more instant to 400%. We could not have envisaged that's how high it would go, which has then allowed us to quite quickly look at the service we're providing, be fleet of foot, change it, tweak it, which has then meant we've got additional revenue coming in. So the return on investment on that, just one service using that piece of equipment, well, that software has been huge, huge.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions?
Could I just make one final comment? Whilst this may not have been articulated in this meeting about the interventions of scrutiny on this, it's entirely within your gift, Chair, and the committee's gift to say when you want to see it as well. If it's not in there, you can have it back every month if you feel it's necessary. So that's entirely your gift, Chair. You know, we'd be happy to provide any kind of response to scrutiny whenever you feel it's necessary.
Thank you. Can I just ask one question? All the work that you're doing above with us and above with yourselves, with the officers, how will that impact with the subcontractors? Because I do know that a subcontractor could go out on site and do something and totally ruin everything that we've sort of spoken about and what we've reassured that customer or resident. So how will that filter down to the subcontractors?
Thank you, Chair. It is a great question, and I'd like to tell you something real rather than hypothetical. So in the highways transformation, I've been leading a customer journey working group, and we put this tool that Tracy was talking about onto the highways website, and we've been receiving about 1,000 pieces of feedback a month from our customers. It's been fantastically well received. As you can imagine, that feedback is quite critical, which I don't think was a shock. And we've been, myself and my group have been taking the feedback, reviewing it every month and feeding it into the transformation and making live changes according to what the residents are telling us. And as part of that wider piece in highways and that programme board, the other working groups that are leading in the transformational change or the new CRM procurement and the contract with the provider are making accounts for that feedback in their contract reviews and the way that contract is designed in the future. So that is a real risk if we think and believe something, but we don't follow that up with the way that we work with our subcontractors. And that's something we've been really conscious of in highways, and I would use that learning going forward.
That's great, thank you. Do we want to ask them to come back at any particular time for an update? I do think this is something we need to take on board quite seriously, because at the end of the day, it's our resident that's a priority. Councillor Worthington.
I think we've got to give them time to get settled in. I think to ask them to come back in a month's time would be irresponsible. So I think really, leave it to the officers to ask them then when they've got something to come back to and show us. Thank you.
Councillor Yates.
Yes, really just to reiterate what Councillor Worthington said, I think it should go down on the work programme, but with the TBC at the moment, but with us having the right to sort of make sure it's no longer than 6 months, something like that.
Yep, that's great. Happy to take it to the work programme. Thank you both. If that's okay. Yeah. Right then, I think that's... Anybody else wanted to... No? Right, I think that's everything. Thank you very much both. That's very appreciated. Ian, don't go anywhere.
Chair, that we've got Rob Salmon down as Assistant Director. He will be less than pleased. We'll have a few guffaws about that later. Sorry, Chair.
Okay, we're now on item 6, Cabinet's response to MTFS Working Group report. Councillor Parry, the floor is yours.
Oh, why has it just gone off? Don't know why that did that, but never mind. So, Chair, this is the report that follows up from the from the MTFS Scrutiny Working Group and the recommendations made to Cabinet prior to the MTFS and budget being approved in February. So this is the kind of wash-up of that, if you like, in terms of the official responses that we gave to the working group and to their representation to Cabinet, which were largely embedded within and changed within the MTFS and the budget that was approved in February.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Yates.
Yes, just straightforward question really. I've compared this, the R1 to R4, with the climate change one, and there's I've got a sea of blank in the third column. I'm just wondering, you know, can we expect to see key performance indicators there relating to financial targets, the actual service delivery? Because one thing to actually have the transformation which produces the financial things, but we don't want an effect on the service which is delivered. In fact, you know, everything we look to do is look to continuously improve, and also some kind of KPI on the actual user feedback, you know, the residents or the businesses which are involved in those aspects of it. So I would like to see something on the bones of the structure, some kind of fleshing out, so to speak, and preparation for the next time which is put on. And I also think is that this is critical to delivery of the budget, and some of the concerns which were there is that, again, I think this needs to be a regular item updated on the work programme. Certainly I would say quarterly, and if it's only quarterly, the presentation is a 10-minute discussion, then all being fine. But if it obviously does go slightly awry and we looking towards the plan B scenario, then obviously it does need to have that due respect.
I have good news. Thank you for that question, because it does prompt me to say that actually this is the last quarter that we'll be reporting in the current corporate financial integrated performance report. The new report moving forward from after this month into the first quarter, reported quarterly as we are required to, will have a different set of performance indicators, which I think will be a clearer and easier, I think, to track and monitor through those things. I don't think any of us these days are great believers in masses of KPIs, are we? We've just got to be focused on what are the priorities and what are the deliverables and how are we doing on that journey. So the reports that you'll see in the next quarter, quarter one, will be different. And I think it's probably opportune time that the leaders now join us, that he actually maybe tells you a bit more.
Could I perhaps offer some clarification, Madam Chairman, and congratulations. Have you got the document that's got the blank columns in the annex? Yes. So the reason for that is there's been a problem with mod.gov. Mr. Tradewell has got the actual populated document with the cabinet response to it. So your question is quite correct in as much as you've got a document with blank pages. The actual document has got a load of stuff in there which we need to circulate to you, really.
I think I'm right in thinking that Mandy did send round a PDF of the agenda to all the members of the committee because there was a problem with mod.gov. I think you must be looking at the version on mod.gov, Councillor Yates, and there should be in your email box somewhere a version that does have that third column completed. Apologies for that.
Does that mean you're speechless there, Councillor Yates? You've got nothing else to say? Can we have that minute? Can we have that minute, please?
The key issue, I wasn't expecting that you'd completely blanked the response, but yes, you're right. I had a previous copy. I haven't scanned down all the way down today's copy because I was using that for other reference. But if you've got paper copies, it is easy. It is. I've got multiple tabs opening. But the reality of it is making sure that we've got those KPIs from a point of view of keeping the finances on track, making sure we've got the service delivery on track, and making sure we're listening to the end users of those particular services and how it impacts them, hopefully positively with the positive change. Then that still stands, and the requirement to obviously review it at the on the work programme still stands, so there's no real need to come back and whatever. But yes, I appreciate the issues with modern government. I wasn't able to open it this morning.
Thank you, Councillor Yates. We are having a working party, aren't we, in June? We will be deciding a new working party to take forward.
Yes, the committee appoints to the MTFS working group in June, so it'll be your next meeting when you'll be looking at membership.
So we'll put your name on the list, Councillor Yates. Sorry, we're now moving on to, I'm using your screen, sorry. Item 7, Climate Change Working Group Report on the Carbon Sequestration and Woodland Creation Cabinet's Response. Over to you, Councillor White.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And the sharp-eyed amongst you will have noticed that I am not Councillor Tagg, who is unavailable today. So I've volunteered to come forward and present this report to the most fearsome committee in Staffordshire. So be gentle. This is the Cabinet's response to your climate change working group. You'll see that it has gone through a couple of steps prior to arriving here. And there are a couple of aspects, well, the majority of what you've proposed we've accepted in full. A couple of aspects we accept in part, one aspect we accept in part, and one aspect we do not accept. Let me deal with the first one, the last one first, which is the one that we don't accept. You've suggested that the Cabinet be requested to consider cessation of disposal of council-owned land, county farms already on the asset disposal list until it's been considered for inclusion in the concept model. You will be aware, because this committee does the MTFS work, that our MTFS is built around a whole series of strategies, one of which is the asset disposal strategy, which has been successful, but it does support the medium-term financial strategy. So the question, I suppose, back to you is, if we aren't disposing of assets to support the MTFS in pursuit of the climate change agenda, where do we get the money from to support the MTFS? And this is the delivery of legally mandated services that we must deliver as a consequence of our obligations to our citizens and to government. So that was the rationale that sat behind the do not accept. On the accept in part, the Cabinet requested to consider the amount of carbon sequestration that can be achieved on Staffordshire County Council land. We note or identify the Zero by Nature study, which goes some way to identify that number. So I hope, Madam Chairman, that you're able to accept Cabinet's response to that. I appreciate there may well be some disappointment amongst those that are involved in the climate change working group, simply because of the amount of effort that went into it. But there's always going to be some tension between what you would like to achieve in an ideal world versus what we have to, I suppose, balance those competing priorities that we have as a council. Madam Chairman, back to you. Hopefully this is going to be quite a succinct report, really, because it's just our feedback.
Thank you, and thank you for that response. Yes, we do understand as a group, as a working group, that there were alternative options that may be available. Do we have any questions? Can we keep it short then, Councillor Yates, please?
Yes, I'll start off with thanking the Cabinet for agreeing to put a significant fund down for the actual planting of trees. The reason really the county farmers was put in there, you know, because once they've gone, you know, there's a sort of adage of if you've got land, you've got options. If you've got land, if you don't have land, you're obviously reducing the options. And the simple question is we've got to double down and actually look at how we can, you know, get the actual land area for us to do our bit. I know there's been a circulation which has gone around regarding a virtual forest from the West Midlands Combined Authority with the mayor there. And he's sort of putting it out there that if people plant a sponsored tree from the West Midlands Combined Authority, that contributes to the West Midlands Combined Authority carbon sequestration. I have a principal issue with that. I mean, in principle, it sounds absolutely fantastic. So, you know, I'm not 100% against, or certainly not 100% for. The issue is that everybody and every organisation has to mitigate their carbon capture and carbon sequestration. So if you sort of sponsor that tree, you can only sponsor it once, and it doesn't actually mitigate that organisation's or that person's carbon themselves. So you've still got to double it up because it's not on that land. So that is an issue. I look forward not so much to debating it here, but you know, when the climate change group restarts, I think we've obviously got new projects to potentially look at, but we've also got the review and the monitoring of the projects which we've agreed. And obviously, you know, so I'm not talking about why don't you plant it on this hedgerow, this field here, there. So that's the place to do it. But I think what we've got to do is to look at and be radical and look at different ideas and different exemplars of where we can actually go to find something which actually does resolve that carbon footprint sequestration issue of Staffordshire County Council without affecting other people's own carbon sequestration, and that's why that was in there. So that's the only comment which I will make.
I spent Saturday afternoon with a farmer going around his 1,200 acres, and farming is a complicated business. We need to make sure food security is in place. There are all sorts of geopolitical tensions around at the moment. So when we can walk and chew gum at the same time, so we can think about how we solve the carbon emissions problem, but we've also got to think about how we feed our the mouths we have in this country. So we don't go into this in some sort of helter-skelter fashion. We've got to think very carefully about how we achieve it in order to deal with those, again, back to the phrase, competing priorities that we have, not just as a nation, but also as our obligations as an authority to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Heath.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And my congratulations too. Yeah, Alan, you've taken the words out of my mouth, really, because I'm very pleased to hear that you spent some time with a farmer and saw it from the farmer's side, and the land that will grow stuff has got to be maintained to grow crops and to feed the nation. But where I live in the north of the county, there is a lot of land that would benefit from having trees that cannot be grazed heavily or grow crops or anything. And if you're sort of so keen on planting all these trees, but personally, I don't see the real gain. But why don't we invest in some of the poorer land that isn't suitable for farming, for agriculture, and invest in that and plant your trees up there? I can take you within 5 miles of where I live, where there's loads. Yes, some of it's in the Peak Park, but maybe working with Peak Park. We've heard about working with other authorities. Yeah, plant your trees, but where trees will grow but nothing else.
Have you seen the time? Very quick, very quick.
Yes, I'm just very glad that Councillor Heath's been on the road to Damascus, because the last time I suggested that we should put a call out for planting trees on unproductive farmland. You said there was no such thing as unproductive farmland, so I'm very pleased to hear what you've just said. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
No arguing, thank you. Councillor White? No further... No? Okay. No further questions? No? Okay, I think we move on to the work programme now. Thank you.
Yes, your next meeting is the 18th of June, and at that first meeting you'll have a draft work programme for the next municipal year.
Is everybody quite happy with that? Thank you. Okay, that's it. Meeting over. Thank you very much for attending.